In her bedroom, in the attic, in the woods, her sexual abuse was always in the dark. But today's guest found a way to bring her sexual abuse into the light. Now she's helping countless others do the same. There is life after sexual abuse, and there is a right and wrong way to find it. What about that? The light, the darkness, that was really one of the things that held you captive, is the darkness that surrounded this, that went on for 10 years.
Yeah, the darkness, I believe, is the secret. It's an epidemic in our country and the world. So many people are affected by the silence. You know, we feel like we have to keep it a secret, but we don't. There's freedom in coming out into the light and bringing our sin and the sin of others out into the light, I believe.
And that's why you titled your book Hush, because one of the things that you found out, and some of the stories that you share in your book from others who have been brave enough to speak out and say, this is what happened to me, family members did not respond in a positive way. And they said, don't talk about that.
Exactly.
Don't tell others. We don't want other people to know.
We don't want to bring bad upon our family name. You know, we don't want to shame ourselves. But the fact is we need to think about the victim and what's best for them. And what is best for them is to let them know it wasn't their fault, that they don't need to feel the shame of this, and that there's freedom and healing when they walk in the light.
Now, one of the reasons why you are here today and you're doing well, I believe, is because of your mother's response when you shared with her what had been going on. She immediately, she told you, this was not your fault. This is wrong, and I'm going to hold your stepfather accountable. She called the authorities.
Right.
And what happened? Tell us what happened during that week.
Well, it was a very frightening week for me.
And it had to be for her, too, because here she had been married all these years, didn't know this was going on. Her whole world was thrown into a tizzy as well.
Right, exactly. We were in hiding. We went to family members' houses, friends, just hiding from him, afraid of what he would do if he found us.
Because the authorities immediately came
interviewed him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he denied everything.
He denied everything.
And most of the time they do, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do. So we were in hiding. We were going through the whole process of the report, and he tried to find us many times. The phone seemed to ring off the hook everywhere we tried to hide. He would come looking for us, and a week later, we had a police car come to the home that we were staying in and let us know that my stepfather had committed suicide. And that was really hard for me. I remember running around the house we were staying in, some friends, saying, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. I was so furious that he would, you know, take that easy road out, that he would never face justice here on earth. And
that he could never be held accountable for what he did. But the courts actually ruled that his suicide was confirmation
of his guilt.
Of his guilt.
Yeah, and that brought, you know, some justice to me.
And as much as you hated what he did to you, you didn't want him to take his life.
I didn't, and that's the thing. Abusers are like two different people. You know, on one hand, he was this horrible monster, but on the other hand, he was a good father to me. There were times when, you know, I knew I could go to him with anything. I could talk to him.
He was supportive of your activities growing up?
He was my biggest sports fan. He was always there for me. So, you know, it was like we were mourning the loss of that part of him.
Yeah.
But, of course, we were freed and found great peace and joy knowing I wouldn't have to live in fear anymore.
Let's talk a little bit about your forgiving him. Is forgiveness a part in all of this?
It's a huge part. It's a hard part, and it's a part I think takes time. And I think it's hard when other people place that on you. You know, you need to forgive.
Right.
And that was hard for me because I knew it was my duty to forgive as a Christian. But I knew also that I needed to take time to get there. And it was part of my process, but I needed to place the blame where it belonged first so that I could understand that it wasn't my fault, and forgiveness came later.
So tell us a little bit how you walked through that. Because I feel like, Nicole, there may be some watching today, and you know that when that person is mentioned or that situation, you still feel that little, what I call ink, you know, in your spirit. You're uncomfortable. You feel that those feelings rise up of, you know, sometimes hatred, sometimes disdain.
Sure.
And that's a pretty good sign that you haven't forgiven. So how did you walk through that? Because I know that couldn't have been easy.
No, it wasn't. And honestly, for many years, I would say that I had forgiven him, but I knew I had that inside of me.
You had that ink.
I did have that ink. I had it, and that was the signal to me in college. It was 6 years later. I was in college, and I was really dealing with the hatred and the bitterness that I felt towards him, and just really took it to the Lord and said, God, I want to be free from this. I don't want to hold this, you know. And it was almost like this vision that God had given me. I woke up one morning, and I saw God facing my stepfather, and he was very upset at what my stepfather had done.
Wait, you saw this in a vision?
I did. I turned around, I saw God turn around and face me, and he just reached out to me and just held me and cried over what had been done. And I saw on the other side, my stepfather was tugging at the Lord's robe and asking for forgiveness, truly and honestly. And I saw God turn around, forgive him, come back and comfort me. And that
Wow.
spoke to my heart so much, because I knew it was true. And it was like a punch in the face, because I knew I wasn't above God. I should forgive as he would forgive. And I can't explain it as anything other than a spiritual kind of thing, that this gift that God's given us of forgiveness. But I felt like a cord had been cut between me and my stepfather, where I had for so long dragged him along.
I really feel like there maybe someone watching, you can totally relate to what Nicole is talking about today, and that you've been carrying the weight of that unforgiveness and that person, that situation on your back. And I just want you to know that there are prayer partners available to pray for you today. And it's no accident that you're watching, and the Lord wants to heal you. And, you know, I've just been reading a book that talks about how important that it is to forgive, because did you know that unforgiveness gives the enemy legal permission to come into your life? In other words, when you make the choice not to forgive, it opens the door, you know, for the enemy to come in. And there's a minister that's a good friend of mine who is writing a book on deliverance and has prayed for thousands of people to be delivered. And he said, you know, there's no prayer that I can pray that is strong enough to bring deliverance through the blood of Jesus when someone has unforgiveness. And he said, so before I can even begin to deal with someone who needs deliverance in their life, they have to be willing to forgive and to release that unforgiveness. And so I think what people don't understand is that even more so in releasing your stepfather, it also gave you such freedom. So that's amazing. You had that vision. Well, how were you different after that? Did you know, okay, I've got to let this go. I've got to forgive? I
did. I knew it that morning, and I then wrote out a prayer to God, and I said, you know, I blamed my stepfather. I placed the blame where it belonged, but I also said, you know, I'm releasing you.
Yes.
And I'm going to live my life now without having this cord attached to you and letting you affect everything in my life.
Yes, that's good. That's so important. I tell you, that is such an important aspect of it. And what about your mother? How did she forgive?
I wouldn't know how to explain her story, but I guess saying that her process was separate from me, but also together. You know, together we had a lot of healing, but separately my mom went on her own walk with the Lord, and she was able to find forgiveness for what my stepfather did, though it was very hard. You know, I'm her one and only child, and knowing that a lot of it, her forgiveness had to come with herself, and knowing how she got into a relationship with an abuser to start with. Her stuff had to come from way back in dealing with her own life.
Did the Lord ever show you or her anything about his final moments before he committed suicide, or do you think he may have called out to the Lord based on that vision that you saw?
I hope so. You know, I don't
and
know
the fact
the
that
answers.
you could even say that you hope so.
Yeah.
That you still would, that somehow he would have repented before he died.
Well, I mean, that should be all of our hope as followers of Christ, is that we would all find him, but
But that's just evidence of the healing that God has done in your life. Because how many times have you seen victims where a child has been murdered and you see the parents in court and they say, "I'll never forgive. I hope they burn in hell." But I mean, and that's only the human reaction. You had those moments.
I had those moments. But praise God for His grace and mercy.
Well, so how do we